everyone, it's your CB Divas, Shannon and Kristen from Barleans, and today we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system. Now I know that's a mouthful, but I promise we're going to break it down and make it simple, so don't worry.
And let's start right away by using the term ECS instead of endocannabinoid system.
Good idea. Okay.
Cool. So from now on, when we use the term ECS, you'll know we're talking about the endocannabinoid system.
Perfect. And before we get started, we first want to tell you exactly what we're going to be covering in this webinar. First, we're going to tell you what the ECS is, how it works, and specifically how CBD affects the ECS. Then we'll go over some of the bodily functions that are affected by the ECS. And lastly, we'll talk briefly about endocannabinoid deficiency and if that's really even a thing.
Okay, so let's jump in. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the major systems of the body.
The digestive system, circulatory system, nervous system, that kind of thing?
Yep, those are all systems that we've got, and I'm here to tell you we also have the endocannabinoid system, or ECS, as another bodily system that every single one of us has.
You know, that's right, and I heard that the ECS is actually present in all vertebrates, mammals, birds, reptiles, and even fish.
Okay, so wait, Shannon, if the ECS is actually present in all vertebrates, how come so many people haven't even heard of it?
Well, if people haven't heard of it, they shouldn't feel bad because scientists only discovered it in the 1990s, and they've only recently started teaching about it in medical schools.
Okay, that's fair. I suggest they get on it. But it's still a really big deal because the ECS is responsible for some pretty major things in your body. But more on that in just a bit. But essentially, it's a complex signaling system made up of cell receptors located throughout your body. Basically, your body is interconnected, and the heart of the connection is the ECS.
In fact, that's why it's sometimes called the body's master control system, because as Kristen mentioned, it works to regulate a whole bunch of bodily functions. But from a big picture perspective, the main role of the ECS is to maintain something called homeostasis.
Which is really just a fancy word for balance. So here's the deal. Our bodies are self-regulating, and we're constantly shifting one way or another to stay balanced and healthy. The ECS wants to maintain a stable internal environment despite the fluctuations in the external environment.
So what's a couple examples of that?
Okay, so like if you are hot, for example, then you start to sweat to cool down. If you're dehydrated, usually you get a signal to your brain that you're thirsty. And I'd say another example would be like when your blood sugar spikes after a meal and your body secretes insulin to lower it.
Got it.
So it's all in an effort to keep things stable and balanced.
Okay, got it. That makes total sense. Now, we mentioned earlier that the ECS is made up of cell receptors. I don't want to get too sciencey here, but the specific receptors involved are called CB1 and CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors are mostly focused in the brain and central nervous system, but you'll also find them in the lungs, liver, kidneys, and reproductive organs. You'll find CB2 receptors mainly in the immune system.
Okay, so these receptors are really all throughout the body, and they are designed to interact with something called cannabinoids.
Thus, endocannabinoid system.
It's all coming together now.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I heard the word cannabinoid. My brain went, cannabinoid, that has something to do with cannabis. Cannabis, that's pot, right? So cannabinoids must have something to do with marijuana. Well, that was kind of a big misinformed leap on my part because that's not what cannabinoids are all about. We actually make cannabinoids right inside our own little old bodies.
And I also just want to point out real quickly that marijuana and cannabis are not synonymous, though many people think it's the same thing. Cannabis is the genus, and marijuana and hemp are part of that family.
Right.
So anyway, back to cannabinoids. The cannabinoids in our bodies are called endocannabinoids, endo meaning inside. Now, these endocannabinoids that our bodies make, all on their own, bind or interact with CB1 and CB2 receptors. And when they do, the ECS is activated to go to work on wherever your body needs help getting back into balance.
The thing is that most of us don't make as many endocannabinoids as we need to keep things in check. So supplementing our bodies with cannabinoids made outside of the body can really lend us a hand.
And that's where CBD comes in. So you see, CBD is called a phytocannabinoid, phyto meaning plant. So it's a plant-based cannabinoid, and as hopefully most of you know, legal CBD or cannabidiol comes from hemp, not marijuana. And it's very different from THC, which is a cannabinoid most people have heard about. That cannabinoid in marijuana is what makes you high. So, once and for all, CBD does not make you high, and legal hemp-derived CBD hemp oil supplements contain little to no THC and not even remotely enough to make you high.
But what CBD does do is work in a very similar way as your own endocannabinoids by activating those CB1 and CB2 cell receptors, and in turn, spurring the ECS into action. And think about all of those places in the body where CB1 and CB2 receptors live. That's the reason that the ECS is responsible for modulating so many bodily functions.
Okay, so just to be very clear, it's our ECS that modulates all of those functions to keep our bodies balanced and healthy. CBD stimulates the ECS into action. So it's not CBD itself that has the power to do all these things to keep you healthy. It's actually the ECS.
Right, and CBD keeps the ECS toned and healthy. Phew, that is a lot of acronyms. Let's go ahead and get this thing wrapped up ASAP before people go AWOL.
Agreed. But one last thing. You had mentioned endocannabinoid deficiency. Can you just shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So scientists theorize that there's something called endocannabinoid deficiency. And what that means is that your body is not making enough of its own endocannabinoids to keep the ECS working properly. Now, this is still being studied, but it's thought that things like gut problems, like an imbalance of bacteria in the biome, or an inflammatory diet, or lack of exercise, lack of omega-3s, or restful sleep can all contribute to deficiency in endocannabinoids.
You know, if you think about it, it all makes a lot of sense.
It really does. I agree. So stay tuned on that because the science continues to emerge all the time.
Will do. Okay, so on that note, if you're interested in learning more, we've got some amazing resources for you in the links on this page. Things like CBD FAQs, blog posts, and more free webinars. So check those out along with Barlean CBD products, all of which have been certified by the U.S. Hemp Authority, so you know they're of the highest quality.
And there you have it, the basics on ECS and how it's affected by CBD.
Thanks for tuning in, and as we like to say here at Barlean,
Carpe CBDM.